From Champion to Phantom, a haunting return to F1. Chapter 1. The final lap. The deafening roar of engines filled the air, a symphony of power and speed. The Monaco Grand Prix was in its final moments, and the atmosphere was electric. Fans from all over the world had their eyes glued to one car, number 11, driven by the legendary Max. As Max maneuvered his car through the winding streets of Monaco, the weight of the moment pressed on him. He was on the verge of securing another championship, a testament to his unmatched skill and determination. The crowd's cheers grew louder, their anticipation palpable. In the cockpit, Max's gloved hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The memories flooded back. The countless hours spent on local tracks, the sacrifices, the early mornings and late nights, the relentless pursuit of perfection. Every drop of sweat, every scar, every moment of doubt, it had all led to this. But as he approached the infamous Casino Square, something inexplicable happened. Out of nowhere, a dark, shadowy figure materialized on the track. It was neither human nor machine, but a spectral presence that seemed to absorb the light around it. Max's eyes widened in horror. There was no time to swerve or brake. In a split second, he made a desperate attempt to avoid the figure, but it was too late. The world seemed to move in slow motion as his car spun out of control, metal screeching against the barriers. Sparks flew, and a plume of smoke rose into the sky. The impact was devastating. Silence. The once jubilant crowd was now in a state of shock. The other racers slowed down, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. The red flag was raised, and the race came to an abrupt halt. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, working feverishly to extract Max from the mangled wreckage. The tension was unbearable. Whispers spread through the stands, each person praying for a miracle. After what felt like an eternity, Max was pulled from the car. He was alive, but barely. As medics rushed him to the on-site medical center, the severity of the situation became clear. Max had suffered significant injuries. The racing community, from team owners to fans, feared the worst. The reigning champion's career, which had once seemed invincible, now hung in the balance. In the paddock, team engineers reviewed the footage, trying to make sense of the accident. But the shadowy figure that Max had seen was nowhere to be found. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. The mystery deepened, and a chilling question lingered. What had Max seen on that fateful lap? Rumors began to circulate. Some spoke of old legends, of spirits that haunted the track, seeking vengeance. Others dismissed it as mere superstition. But one thing was certain. The world of F1 racing would never be the same again. As night fell over Monaco, the city's glitz and glamour were overshadowed by a sense of unease. The events of the day had shaken the racing community to its core. And as Max fought for his life in the hospital, a haunting question remained. Had he become the latest victim of the Phantom of the Grand Prix? Chapter 2. The hospital room. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Max slowly opened his eyes, the bright fluorescent lights above him causing him to squint. His head throbbed, and his body felt like it was weighed down by a ton of bricks. As he tried to piece together his surroundings, fragmented memories of the crash flashed before his eyes. The shadowy figure, the deafening crash, the world spinning out of control. He attempted to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his body, causing him to wince. His racing suit had been replaced by a hospital gown, and bandages covered various parts of his body. The reality of the situation began to sink in. He had survived, but at what cost? As Max grappled with his thoughts, the door to his room creaked open. A tall, slender man stepped in. He had sharp features, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. He wore a tailored black suit, and his presence exuded an air of mystery. Max didn't recognize him, but something about the man felt oddly familiar. "Good to see you awake, Max," the stranger said, his voice smooth and almost hypnotic. Max frowned, trying to place the man's face. "Who are you?" he rasped, his voice hoarse. The man smiled, revealing a set of perfectly white teeth. "My name is Velox," he replied. "I've been watching you for a long time." Max's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Watching me? Why?" Velox chuckled softly. "You have a gift, Max. A talent that few possess. Your passion for racing, your drive to be the best, it's admirable. But that crash, it's taken a toll on you, hasn't it?" Max looked away, the weight of Velox's words pressing down on him. The thought of never racing again was unbearable. He had dedicated his entire life to the sport, and the idea of it being ripped away from him was too much to bear. Sensing Max's despair, Velox leaned in closer. "What if I told you there was a way for you to race again? A way to reclaim your title and your legacy?" Max's eyes widened, hope flickering in them. "What do you mean?" Velox smirked. "Let's just say I have certain abilities. Abilities that could help you get back on the track. But everything comes at a price." Desperation and intrigue battled within Max. The allure of racing again was tempting, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that Velox was not to be trusted. "What do you want in return?" Max asked cautiously. Velox's eyes gleamed with mischief. "All in good time, Max. For now, just know that when the time comes, I'll be back to collect." Before Max could press further, Velox turned on his heel and headed for the door. As he reached the threshold, he paused, casting a final glance over his shoulder. "Rest up, Max. The world hasn't seen the last of you yet." And with that, Velox disappeared, leaving Max alone with his thoughts. The room felt colder, the silence more oppressive. Max's mind raced, trying to make sense of the enigmatic encounter. Who was Velox? What did he want? And most importantly, what price would Max have to pay to race again? As the hours ticked by, Max's determination grew. He would do whatever it took to get back on the track, even if it meant making a deal with the devil himself. But as the shadows lengthened and night fell, a chilling thought crossed his mind. Had he just sealed his fate with a phantom? Chapter 3. The Pact. The night was still, the only sound being the soft hum of the machines monitoring Max's vitals. As he drifted into a deep sleep, the world around him began to blur, giving way to a vast, ethereal racetrack that seemed to stretch on forever. The sky above was a swirling mix of purples and blues, and the air was thick with anticipation. Max found himself standing next to his F1 car, its sleek design shimmering under the otherworldly light. But he wasn't alone. A few paces away stood Velox, his piercing blue eyes fixed on Max. "Welcome, Max," Velox greeted, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "I thought this would be a fitting place for our discussion." Max looked around, trying to make sense of the dreamlike landscape. What is this place? Velox smiled. A realm between reality and fantasy, a place where anything is possible. Here, the limitations of the physical world don't apply. Max's gaze returned to his car, longing evident in his eyes. Is this where I can race again? Velox nodded. Indeed. But as I mentioned before, everything comes at a price. Max took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Tell me what you want. Velox circled Max, his steps deliberate. I can grant you the ability to race again, to feel the wind in your hair and the thrill of the chase. But in return, I need something from you. Max's heart raced. What do you need? Velox stopped in front of Max, his face inches away. Souls, Max. I need you to win souls for me. Max recoiled, confusion and fear evident in his eyes. Souls? What do you mean? Velox's smile widened. Every time you race, every time you win, you'll be taking the ambition, the drive, the very essence of your competitors. Their souls will be mine. Max's mind raced. The thought of stealing the souls of his fellow racers was horrifying, but the allure of racing again was too strong to resist. He was torn between his love for the sport and the moral implications of Velox's offer. Seeing Max's internal struggle, Velox pressed on. Think of it, Max. The wind in your hair, the roar of the engine, the adoration of your fans. All of it can be yours again. All you have to do is say yes. Max's resolve wavered. The memories of his glory days on the track, the thrill of the race, the joy of victory, it was all too much to give up. With a heavy heart, he looked Velox in the eye. I accept your offer. Velox's eyes gleamed with triumph. Excellent. From this day forth, you will race with unmatched speed and skill. But remember, every victory comes with a price. As Velox's words echoed in the vast emptiness, Max felt a sharp pain on his wrist. He looked down to see a dark, intricate mark forming on his skin. The design was unlike anything he had ever seen, a mix of ancient symbols and patterns. Suddenly, the ethereal racetrack began to fade, the colors swirling and merging until everything went black. Max was jolted awake, the beeping of the heart monitor bringing him back to reality. He looked around, the familiar surroundings of the hospital room coming into focus. But as he tried to shake off the remnants of the dream, he noticed the mark on his wrist. It was real, a stark reminder of the pact he had made with Velox. As the weight of his decision pressed down on him, Max couldn't help but wonder if he had made the right choice. Only time would tell if the price he had agreed to pay was worth the return to the racetrack. Chapter 4. The Phantom Racer. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden hue over the racetrack. Max, donning his racing suit, stepped into his car. The memories of the hospital, the dream, and the pact with Velox were still fresh in his mind. But today was not about the past, it was about reclaiming his future. As he revved the engine, a newfound energy surged through him. The car responded to his every touch with an uncanny precision, as if they were one. Max took off, and as he did, he felt an exhilarating rush. He was faster, more agile, and more in tune with the car than he had ever been. The wind whipped through his hair, and the world became a blur. Word quickly spread about Max's miraculous return to the track. Whispers filled the paddock. How had he recovered so quickly? Was it medical intervention, sheer willpower, or something more? The racing community was abuzz with rumors and speculations. A week later, during a test race, the spectators noticed something unusual. As Max's car zoomed past, it appeared ghostly, almost translucent. The sleek metal body seemed to shimmer and shift, giving it an ethereal quality. Cameras struggled to capture the phenomenon, with images appearing hazy and distorted. On the track, other racers felt an unsettling presence. One by one, they reported being overtaken by what they described as a phantom. The spectral car would appear out of nowhere, its engine's roar echoing like a distant thunderstorm, only to vanish just as quickly. No one could keep up with Max's supernatural speed. The race was intense. Every time another racer seemed to be closing the gap, Max's car would surge forward, leaving them in the dust. The crowd watched in awe, their cheers echoing across the track. As Max crossed the finish line, securing his victory, a wave of euphoria washed over him. He had done it. He was back on top. But as he stepped out of the car, an eerie coldness enveloped him. The jubilant cheers of the crowd seemed distant, muffled. Max looked down at the mark on his wrist, the dark symbols a stark reminder of the price he had paid for this victory. In the pit lane, his team celebrated, their faces a mix of joy and disbelief. But as Max approached, their smiles faded, replaced by looks of concern. They had seen the ghostly apparition on the track, and they couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Max, his chief engineer, began, hesitating. What happened out there? Your car. It was like nothing we've ever seen. Max looked away, struggling to find the words. I don't know, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. But I think I've made a deal I might come to regret. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the track, Max was left with a sinking feeling. The thrill of the race, the joy of victory, it all felt hollow. He had become the phantom racer, a legend on the track. But at what cost? Chapter 5. The first soul. The sun blazed down on the Silverstone circuit, its rays reflecting off the polished surfaces of the F1 cars lined up for the race. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Among the racers, a young, confident face stood out. Leo, with his fiery red helmet and a smirk that spoke of unbridled ambition, was the newest sensation in the racing world. His rapid ascent in the F1 circuit had been nothing short of meteoric, and he was hungry for more. As Max prepared for the race, he felt Leo's gaze on him. Turning, he met the younger racer's challenging eyes. Ready to be dethroned by the new generation, old man? Leo taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. Max, usually calm and composed, felt a twinge of irritation. Racing isn't just about youth and arrogance, he retorted. It's about skill and experience. Leo laughed, the sound echoing in the stillness. We'll see about that. As the race began, the two cars were neck and neck, battling for dominance. But as the laps progressed, something strange began to happen. Leo, who had started with such vigor and determination, began to falter. His once precise turns became sloppy, his speed inconsistent. It was as if an invisible force was sapping his energy and ambition. Max, on the other hand, seemed unstoppable. His car moved with supernatural speed, overtaking Leo with ease. The gap between them widened with each passing second. The crowd watched in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. The once invincible Leo was now struggling to keep up, his car lagging further and further behind. As Max crossed the finish line, the victory felt hollow. He looked back, seeing Leo's car come to a slow stop, well before the finish. The young racer stepped out, his face pale, his eyes devoid of their earlier fire. He looked defeated, not just in the race but in spirit. The pit lane was abuzz with whispers and murmurs. Everyone was trying to make sense of Leo's shocking performance. But Max knew. He felt a cold presence behind him and turned to see Velox, his piercing blue eyes fixed on Leo. "Ah, the first soul," Velox murmured, a hint of glee in his voice. "Such raw ambition, such fiery passion. It will serve me well." Max stared at Leo, the reality of his pact with Velox hitting him like a ton of bricks. He had not just defeated Leo in a race, he had taken his very essence, his soul. Leo, with the help of his team, slowly made his way to the paddock. He looked lost, his confident stride replaced by a listless shuffle. The fire, the ambition that had defined him, was gone. Max approached him, guilt weighing heavily on his heart. "Leo," he began, but the younger racer didn't respond. His eyes, once full of dreams and aspirations, were now empty. Velox appeared beside Max, his voice a chilling whisper. "This is just the beginning, Max. There are many more souls to be won." Max watched as Leo was led away, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had made a pact with the devil, and the price was higher than he could have ever imagined. The thrill of victory, the joy of racing, it all seemed meaningless now. He had become an instrument of Velox's dark desires, and the road ahead looked bleak and treacherous. Chapter 6. The haunting begins. The racetrack was alive with the usual cacophony of sounds, the revving of engines, the chatter of teams, and the distant hum of the eager crowd. But for Max, a new, more sinister symphony had begun to play. As he prepared for the next race, the air around him seemed to thicken, charged with an energy that sent shivers down his spine. Everywhere he looked, he saw them, fleeting visions of the racers whose ambitions he had taken. They appeared as ghostly apparitions, their faces twisted in anguish, their eyes accusing. Leo was the most prominent among them, his once fiery gaze now hollow and defeated. As Max sped down the track, the whispers began. They were soft at first, almost indistinguishable from the roar of the engine. But as the race progressed, they grew louder, more insistent. "Thief," they hissed. "Soul stealer." The shadows of the tormented racers seemed to dart around him, making the track appear distorted and treacherous. The other racers, once friendly and collegial, had begun to distance themselves from Max. Whispers of the phantom racer and his cursed car spread like wildfire. Some spoke of ancient legends, of racers who had made pacts with dark entities and paid the price. Others clutched lucky charms and performed rituals before races, hoping to ward off the malevolent energy that seemed to surround Max. In the pit, Max's team watched with growing concern. They had noticed the change in him, the distant look in his eyes, the way he flinched at shadows, the muttered conversations with seemingly no one. They whispered among themselves, questioning his mental state and wondering if the pressure of the races had finally gotten to him. After a particularly grueling race, where Max had narrowly avoided a crash after swerving to avoid one of his haunting visions, his chief engineer, Marco, approached him. "Max," Marco began, choosing his words carefully, "are you all right? You've been different lately." Max looked up, his eyes bloodshot and weary. "I see them, Marco. The racers. They're everywhere." Marco exchanged a worried glance with another team member. "Max, there's no one there. You need to rest, maybe see someone." But before Marco could finish, Velox appeared, his presence casting a cold shadow over the pit. "Remember our agreement, Max," he hissed, his voice dripping with menace. "You must continue. The souls won't collect themselves." Max nodded, defeated. "I know. I'll keep racing." Velox smirked, his eyes gleaming with malevolent satisfaction. "Good. Don't forget what's at stake." As Velox disappeared, Max was left with a sinking feeling. The weight of his pact pressed down on him, and the haunting visions and whispers showed no sign of abating. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, with no way out. The road ahead looked bleak. With every race, Max's mental and emotional state deteriorated. The once celebrated champion was now a shadow of his former self, tormented by the very souls he had taken. And as the haunting continued, Max began to question if he would ever find a way to break free from Velox's grip. Chapter 7. The search for answers. The weight of his pact with Velox was taking its toll on Max. The haunting visions, the whispers, and the ever-present shadow of Velox loomed over him, casting a dark cloud over his once illustrious career. Desperate for answers and a way out, Max decided to delve into the world of the paranormal. His search led him to a dimly lit shop tucked away in a forgotten alley of London. The sign above read, "Mysteries of the Beyond." As he pushed open the creaky door, a bell jingled, announcing his arrival. The shop was filled with the scent of burning incense, and shelves lined with ancient books, crystals, and artifacts greeted him. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with silver hair and piercing green eyes. She introduced herself as Alara, a seer with knowledge of the supernatural. Max hesitated for a moment, then poured out his story, detailing his pact with Velox and the torment he faced. Alara listened intently, her eyes narrowing as she recognized the name Velox. "Ah, Velox," she murmured. "A name that dates back centuries. He is an ancient entity, tied to the very essence of ambition and speed. Throughout history, he has made pacts with those who seek greatness, only to ensnare them in his web." Max leaned in, eager to learn more. "Is there a way to break the pact?" Alara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Breaking a pact with an entity like Velox is not to be taken lightly. The consequences can be dire. "But," she added, seeing the desperation in Max's eyes, "there are legends of those who have managed to free themselves from his grasp." She told Max of a legendary racer from decades ago, known as the Silver Streak. Like Max, he had made a pact with Velox but had somehow managed to break free. His real name had been lost to time, but rumors spoke of him living in seclusion in the mountains of Switzerland. Max's heart raced. This was the glimmer of hope he had been searching for. "I need to find him," he declared. "I need to learn how he broke free." Alara nodded, her gaze serious. "It won't be easy, and Velox will not let you go without a fight. But if you truly wish to free yourself, seeking out the Silver Streak may be your best chance." Armed with this newfound knowledge, Max set out on his quest. He traveled to Switzerland, following leads and rumors, climbing higher into the mountains. The journey was treacherous, but Max's determination never wavered. After weeks of searching, he finally found what he was looking for. Nestled in a secluded valley was a modest cabin, smoke rising from its chimney. As Max approached, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with silver hair and a weathered face. "You've been looking for me," the man stated, his voice raspy with age. Max nodded. "Are you the Silver Streak?" The man chuckled. "I haven't been called that in a long time. But yes, I am the one you seek." Max wasted no time, pouring out his story and pleading for the Silver Streak's help. The old racer listened intently, nodding as Max spoke of Velox and the haunting visions. "I know your pain," the Silver Streak said. "I too was once ensnared by Velox's promises. But I managed to break free." Max's eyes widened with hope. "How? Please, tell me." The Silver Streak hesitated, then began to recount his tale, detailing his own pact with Velox and the lengths he went to break free. As Max listened, he realized that the path ahead would not be easy. But with the Silver Streak's guidance, he felt a renewed sense of hope. The two racers spent days together, with the Silver Streak sharing his knowledge and secrets. Max knew that the battle with Velox was far from over, but he was no longer alone. Armed with the wisdom of the Silver Streak and a burning determination, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 8. The old champion, the Swiss Alps, loomed large, their snow-capped peaks piercing the clear blue sky. Nestled in a secluded valley was a quaint wooden cabin, smoke curling from its chimney. This was where Max had tracked down Elias, the legendary racer once known as the Silver Streak. Max approached the cabin with a mix of trepidation and hope. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with a mane of white hair and deep-set eyes that held a world of wisdom and pain. "You must be Max," Elias said, his voice gravelly with age. "I've been expecting you." Max was taken aback. "How did you know?" Elias chuckled. "Word travels fast, even in these remote parts. Besides, Velox and I have old scores to settle." Max stepped inside, the warmth of the cabin a stark contrast to the chilly mountain air. Over cups of steaming tea, Elias shared his own haunting experiences with Velox. Like Max, he had been seduced by the promise of unmatched speed and had paid a heavy price. The visions, the whispers, the shadows. "I've been through it all," Elias said, his gaze distant. "Velox is a master manipulator, preying on our deepest desires and ambitions." Max leaned forward, eager to learn more. "How did you break free?" Elias sighed, his fingers playing with an old silver talisman that hung around his neck. "It wasn't easy. Velox's grip is strong, and breaking the pact requires more than just willpower. It requires sacrifice." He went on to reveal a ritual, passed down through generations, that could break the bond with Velox. But he warned Max of its dangers. The ritual is a test, not just of skill but of character. You must win a race, but not with Velox's power. You must rely solely on your own abilities. And the hardest part, Elias paused, his gaze piercing Max's soul. You must willingly give up your ambition, the very thing that drives you. Max swallowed hard. The thought of racing without Velox's power was daunting, but the idea of giving up his ambition was unthinkable. It was what had driven him all these years, what had made him a champion. Seeing Max's internal struggle, Elias reached out, placing the silver talisman in Max's hand. This will protect you from Velox's influence during the race. But remember, the real battle is within. Max clutched the talisman, feeling its cool weight in his hand. Thank you, Elias. I don't know if I can do this, but I have to try. Elias nodded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. I once stood where you stand now, faced with the same impossible choice. But I realized that true greatness comes not from external power but from within. As Max left the cabin, the weight of his task pressing down on him, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Elias's wisdom and the protection of the talisman, he was ready to face Velox and reclaim his soul. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Max was no longer alone in his battle against the dark entity. Chapter 9. The challenge. The Monaco Grand Prix, with its iconic streets and breathtaking views, was abuzz with excitement. The air was thick with anticipation, the crowd's cheers echoing off the buildings. Among the racers, two names dominated the conversation: Max, the legendary racer with a haunted past, and Isabella, the current F1 champion known for her unparalleled skill and precision. Isabella, with her jet-black hair and piercing blue eyes, was a force to be reckoned with on the track. Her rise to the top had been meteoric, and she was determined to defend her title. When Max issued his challenge, she accepted without hesitation, her competitive spirit ignited. As the race began, Max clutched the silver talisman Elias had given him. He could feel its energy pulsing, grounding him, reconnecting him with his natural skills. The roar of the engines, the screech of the tires, the wind rushing past, it all felt real, raw, unfiltered by Velox's dark influence. The two racers were evenly matched, their cars darting through the streets of Monaco like twin bolts of lightning. Every turn, every maneuver was executed with precision, neither racer giving an inch. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, the tension palpable. But as the laps progressed, Max felt a familiar coldness creeping in. Velox was near, his malevolent presence casting a shadow over the race. The dark entity tried to interfere, to tilt the odds in Max's favor, but the talisman protected him. Its energy formed a barrier around Max, shielding him from Velox's influence. The final lap was a nail-biter. Max and Isabella were neck and neck, the finish line in sight. The crowd held its breath, the world seeming to stand still for a moment. And then, in a heart-stopping finish, Isabella crossed the line a fraction of a second before Max. The crowd erupted in cheers, the atmosphere electric. Isabella, her face flushed with victory, raised her arms in triumph. But her gaze quickly found Max, a look of respect and admiration in her eyes. Max, though disappointed, felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had raced with his own skill, free from Velox's influence. He had come close to victory, proving to himself that he didn't need the dark entity's power. As he stepped out of his car, the cheers of the crowd washing over him, Max was approached by Isabella. "That was one hell of a race," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "You're a true champion, with or without Velox." Max smiled, the weight of his pact with Velox still heavy on his mind, but with a renewed sense of hope. "Thank you, Isabella. This race was about more than just winning. It was about reclaiming my soul. The two racers shared a moment of understanding, their rivalry set aside for a brief moment. Max knew that his battle with Velox was far from over, but with allies like Isabella and the protection of the talisman, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 10. The sacrifice. The sun had barely risen over the Monaco horizon, casting a golden hue over the racetrack. The aftermath of the race still lingered, the remnants of tire marks and the distant echoes of roaring engines. Max stood there, taking in the serenity, a stark contrast to the adrenaline-filled atmosphere of the previous day. Despite the loss to Isabella, a profound sense of peace enveloped him. The weight of Velox's influence, the haunting visions, the insidious whispers, they all seemed distant now, like a bad dream fading with the morning light. With a deep breath, Max made his way to the press conference area, where a sea of reporters awaited, their cameras flashing, eager for a statement about the nail-biting race. But Max had a different announcement in mind. Today, Max began, his voice steady, "I am announcing my retirement from professional racing." The crowd gasped, reporters exchanged shocked glances, and a murmur rippled through the room. Max continued, "Racing has been my life, my passion. But sometimes, we must make sacrifices for the greater good, for our own peace." As the press conference ended, with reporters scrambling to get more details, a cold wind swept through the area. The temperature dropped noticeably, and a palpable tension filled the air. Velox appeared, his form darker, more menacing than ever. "You dare defy me?" Velox hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "After all I've given you?" Max stood his ground, the silver talisman warm against his skin. "I've made my choice, Velox. I won't be your puppet any longer." Velox's fury was palpable, his form swirling like a dark storm. "You think you can escape me? You think this is over?" With a deep breath, Max closed his eyes, focusing on his love for racing, the pure joy of being on the track, the wind in his hair, the thrill of the chase. He willingly let go of his ambition, his desire for titles and accolades, and as he did, he felt a surge of energy. Velox recoiled, his form flickering, weakened by Max's sacrifice. "What have you done?" he growled. With the power of the talisman and his genuine love for racing, Max confronted Velox. "I've broken our pact. I've taken back my soul." The two forces clashed, the energy around them crackling with intensity. But Max's will was unbreakable, his sacrifice giving him strength. With a final push, he expelled Velox, the dark entity disappearing in a burst of shadow. The air cleared, the tension lifted, and the sun shone brighter than ever. Max stood there, free at last, the weight of the pact finally lifted. As he walked away from the racetrack, the cheers of the crowd still echoing in his ears, Max felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had faced the darkest parts of himself, made the ultimate sacrifice, and come out stronger on the other side. His racing days might be over, but a new chapter was just beginning. With the love and support of his friends, family, and fellow racers, Max was ready to face whatever the future held. Chapter 11. The new beginning. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the Silverstone circuit. Young racers, with dreams in their eyes and fire in their bellies, zoomed around the track, each hoping to make their mark in the world of racing. Overlooking the scene was Max, no longer the phantom racer but a mentor, guiding the next generation. His retirement from professional racing had shocked the world, but Max had found a new purpose. He had set up a training academy for young racers, not just to hone their skills on the track but to prepare them for the challenges that lay ahead. As the engines roared and tires screeched, Max gathered the young racers around him. Racing, he began, is not just about speed and skill. It's about character, about understanding yourself, your desires, your ambitions. He shared his own story, his rise to the top, his pact with Velox, and the haunting that had nearly cost him his soul. The young racers listened in rapt attention, the legend of the Phantom Racer coming to life before their eyes. Unchecked ambition, Max warned, can be your downfall. It's essential to have goals, to strive for greatness, but never at the cost of your soul. As Max imparted his wisdom, in the shadows of the world, Velox continued his sinister work. The dark entity had moved on from the racing world, preying on ambitious individuals in different fields: business tycoons, artists, politicians. His allure was irresistible, his promises of power and success ensnaring many. But Max was determined to counter Velox's influence. With the help of Elias and the Talisman, he reached out to those who had been ensnared by Velox, offering guidance and support. He set up support groups, counseling sessions, and workshops, dedicating his life to helping others avoid the same fate he had suffered. Word of Max's efforts spread, and soon, he was not just a legend in the racing community but a beacon of hope for many. The story of the Phantom Racer became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of staying true to oneself. As the years went by, Max's academy flourished, producing not just skilled racers but well-rounded individuals with a strong sense of self. Isabella, the reigning F1 champion, often visited, sharing her experiences and adding to the rich tapestry of lessons. One evening, as Max stood on the balcony of his academy, overlooking the track, a young racer approached him. "Sir," the racer began, "thank you for everything. Your story, your lessons, they've changed my life." Max smiled, placing a hand on the young racer's shoulder. "Remember," he said, "racing is not just about winning. It's about the journey, the lessons, the growth. Stay true to yourself, and you'll always be a champion." The young racer nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I will, sir. Thank you." As the night descended and the stars twinkled overhead, Max felt a profound sense of contentment. He had faced his demons, made amends, and found a new purpose. The legacy of the Phantom Racer would live on, not as a haunting specter but as a guiding light, showing the way for generations to come. Chapter 12. The legacy. The world of Formula One is one of speed, precision, and adrenaline. But beneath the roar of the engines and the shimmer of the lights, there are stories, legends that shape the very fabric of the sport. And among these tales, the story of Max, the Phantom Racer, stood unparalleled. As years turned into decades, Max's tale became a cornerstone of the F1 community. It was no longer just a story of a racer's ambition and a dark pact, but a lesson in integrity, passion, and the true meaning of success. Young racers, as they stepped onto the tracks, were not just taught about techniques and strategies but were also narrated the legend of Max. They learned about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the allure of dark pacts, and the price one might pay for fleeting success. In the grand halls of racing academies, portraits of great racers adorned the walls. Among them, A prominent painting of Max, not in his racing gear, but as a mentor, a guide, his eyes reflecting wisdom and a depth of experiences. Underneath, a plaque read, "Max, a champion of the heart." Velox, the dark entity that once held the racing world in his sinister grip, found his influence waning. As more and more people became aware of his tactics, his power diminished. The tales of his pacts, once whispered in hushed tones, were now openly discussed, dissected, and warned against. The shadow he cast grew fainter with each passing year. Time, as it always does, marched on. Max, having lived a life full of ups and downs, challenges, and triumphs, grew old. His once jet-black hair turned silver, and the fire in his eyes mellowed down to a warm glow. Surrounded by loved ones, racers he had mentored, and friends from the track, Max passed away peacefully. It was the end of an era, but the beginning of a legacy. The news of his passing sent ripples across the F1 community. Tributes poured in from all corners of the world. Racers, young and old, fans, and officials came together to mourn the loss of a true legend. The Monaco Grand Prix, the very track where Max's journey with Velox had taken a dramatic turn, held a moment of silence in his honor. Cars lined up, engines silent, as thousands paid their respects. A memorial was set up at the Silverstone circuit, where Max had started his academy. A bronze statue of him, looking ahead, a guiding light in hand, stood tall. Around it, plaques detailed his achievements, his challenges, and his contributions to the world of racing. The F1 community, in a unanimous decision, introduced the Max Integrity Award. Given annually, it recognized racers who displayed exceptional character, passion, and dedication both on and off the track. It wasn't just about winning races, but about winning hearts, about leaving a mark that went beyond trophies and titles. As years went by, Max's physical presence was missed, but his spirit, his teachings, and his legacy lived on. The Phantom Racer's tale was not one of caution but of inspiration. It reminded everyone that true success wasn't about the number of races won but about the journey undertaken, the lessons learned, and the lives touched. In the annals of F1 history, among tales of speed, rivalry, and adrenaline, the story of Max shone the brightest. A true champion, not just of the tracks but of hearts, his legacy was a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the timeless values of integrity and passion. In the relentless pursuit of ambition, one must tread carefully, for sometimes the cost of success can be far greater than its rewards. From champion to phantom, a haunting return to F1 serves as a poignant reminder that while passion and drive are commendable, they should never overshadow one's integrity and self-awareness. True champions are not just defined by the titles they hold but by the choices they make and the legacies they leave behind. It's essential to recognize when ambition becomes a dangerous obsession and to understand that some pacts, especially those that compromise one's soul, are never worth the price. If you have enjoyed our Paranormal Formula One racing scary story, please visit us at Paranormal Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to contact us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professional team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal Untold Stories.